Hello and welcome to exercise 3, where we will be practicing more on stroke and fill. I am using the Essentials Classic workspace. In my layers panel, you'll see I have a placed layer and I have the working layer, which you will want to be clicked on. Let's zoom in into section 1. On these top 3 objects, I'm going to select all of them with the black arrow. This tools panel, you'll see that the default is a white fill with a black stroke. Let's select the stroke and make that none. You can also do that up here in your swatches panel, and none is the first icon. You'll see that the stroke is active versus when the fill is on top, the fill is active. Now let's select just the first solid, and over here in the swatches panel, you can expand that panel if you need to. Make sure you are clicked on the fill. Let's just select any solid color. Now on this second section for gradient, if you look here in the defaults, you'll see there is a gradient swatch. Go ahead and click on that. And you will see the default gradient, which is white to black. In your gradient panel, you will see a reverse gradient icon here, and that will swap the location of your slider colors. Next, for the custom gradient, let's do a sample of this gradient with the eyedropper tool, I for shortcut. I do have my key caster on here in the bottom right. So let's create a custom gradient. I'm going to double click on this black slider and let's just select a color. Now let's double click on the white slider and choose another color. If I click back into just this panel, if I click anywhere below that color slider, you can add new points. So here I've added 2. You can click and add more. If you'd like to remove them, you can just click, hold, and drag them off. And you'll see up here are some diamond shapes, and those will change how far this gradient color is going to be between both colors. So let's change this so we can see better. And when I shift this, you'll see it expands further in that direction. And you can always move these sliders. You can move the left and right sliders as well. All right, so there's a custom slider. And now with the black selection arrow, let's click on the last rectangle, and we're going to do a fill of none. So with the fill on top, click this none icon. So you should only have a black stroke. Here to the right, we're going to practice changing the weight of the stroke. So if I click on this first stroke, you'll see up here it has a stroke width of 1 point. Over here at our stroke palette, you may need to click this little flyout, which is 3 lines stacked on top of each other, and choose Show Options. Now we've got many more options to edit our stroke. So the first one is already at 1 point. Let's change the second to a value of 3 points. The next line, let's change to 5 points. And just so you get familiar with both areas, we could change it up here to 7 points, and that will also change here. Here in section 2, I want you to just select any color from your swatches palette. And in this top bar of black rectangles, I would like for you to go to Color Guide, and with this swatch selected, you'll see the fill. If you accidentally filled the stroke, you can just use these double-sided arrows to swap that from stroke to fill, and be sure you're clicked on that swatch so fill is active. So with the swatch selected, go to your Color Guide, and you will click on this top left to set this color as the base for your color guide. So once you've clicked on that, you will have a drop down, and we want to navigate to shades. So now I'd like you with the black selection arrow to select the first rectangle and select one of the shades to the left here, one of these grayish darker colors. And then let's choose a next lighter color. The middle, let's just go with this middle. For the next, let's go with a lighter color. And the last box, choose something lighter on the tints side. So tints have white added, shades have dark added to them. so we can see a good variation. All right, with your swatch selected again, go up to your drop down and let's go to Analogous. You may have to scroll up. And this one's fine. You can see there are 5 colors. You could also go to Analogous too, which has another extra one. So from Analogous, let's go through, and in the middle column, I'd like you to select the top row middle swatch. For the next box, choose the next row middle swatch. For the third, go to the third row and the middle color. For the fourth, go to this fourth row middle swatch. And for the last one, we've got a tealish color for this particular swatch. For this custom gradient, we will switch over to the gradient palette. And what we can do now with this gradient rectangle selected is we can select the far left swatch and click on this eyedropper to choose this leftmost color. And I'm going to click to add another slider and use the eyedropper to select the next color in your analogous row. Let's add another slider and sample the middle color. Another slider for the fourth box, and the last slider, we're going to sample the last color. So now we've created a custom gradient from those color swatches. For section 3, we're going to explore stroke width, stroke profiles, and create some wavy lines. Let's go and change our swatches to the default, which is white fill with black stroke. We're going to swap those so the white is the stroke, and we're going to make the fill none. So with a white stroke, we're going to go to the line tool, and you may want to zoom in with the zoom tool or Z. And with the line tool, I'm going to click and holding down shift, I'm going to create a line the length of this kayak, and it may be helpful. Let's go ahead and change the stroke color with stroke selected. Let's change it to orange. So now that we can see this better, I'm going to zoom in again, or you can use your Command plus and minus keys to zoom in and out more, and your spacebar to pan. With the line selected, go to this little icon here at the left. It's called the width tool, and the shortcut is Shift W. When we click on that, we are able to hover over the line and change the width of that line. I'm going to click and drag and increase the width. And you can see I was a little bit off, so if you click on that new point, you can drag this left and right. And here at the very end of the line, I'm going to click and drag, and the same for this end. And you may need to use your black selection to adjust the line. It doesn't have to be perfect, we just want to know the general shape as closely as we can. And then if I move it again, you'll see I did draw an ellipse. So let's go ahead to our shape tool, choose the ellipse tool. So I'm going to click and drag an oval shape. And with the black selection, you may want to adjust that. And let's use the eyedropper tool to sample the background color and get the black selection tool again. Let's readjust the kayak shape. Be sure to save your document. So right now I'm going to go to File, Save As. And in my Week 1 folder, I'm going to save this file as Week 1 Exercise 3 and my first initial last name _ V1 for version 1. And let's save it as an Illustrator file. All right, next let's create this oar shape. So go back to your line tool, click and drag at the beginning to the end and holding down shift to keep that a straight line. And we currently do not have a stroke, so you can either hit D for default or click this default fill and stroke, or with stroke selected, you can go to your swatch palette and choose a stroke. Let's go with the brown for this one. And you don't need a fill, you're not going to see it in this case, so I'm going to do a fill of none, which you also see in swatches. This first icon says none. So let's zoom in again here and grab the width tool. Somewhere along your line, let's click and drag. And we need to pinch the width of this down also. So I'm going to do that. And if I need to readjust, go to the center point that's been created and drag it And let's create this other extrusion. And over here at this end, let's get the width. Let's click and drag another width area. And then we need to reduce the width here. So I'm going to click and barely skew that up. And you may need to tweak this a little bit. That's okay. Just play around with the width there and get it as closely as you can. So if I need to change the entire width of this line, just grab your block selection tool and you can click on the endpoint to resize. And here in the middle, we can increase that width just slightly. All right, that's looking pretty close for this practice. Next, over here to the right, we're going to check out stroke profiles. So all of these strokes, I would like you to make those 20 points in width. So with all of them selected, go to stroke and change the width value to 20 points. And click off to deselect. Now select the top line. And under here is a profile. It has a drop down that is also located up here. And you can see it's uniform. Let's go ahead and make that this profile 1. And click on the next line. Let's find this triangular looking profile. And you can swap which direction that profile is facing. With the third line, let's find that one, and the last one, let's do this profile. So another thing you can do when you've created a custom line with variations in it, you can select that line, and under profile, you can save that as a new profile, and you can title it. So if I were to need that shape again, I could create a line and click on that profile. Another thing I do want to note that I didn't include in this lesson is you can create arrowheads. So on this next section, I'm just going to select this line for demonstration. And you can see over here we have arrowheads. And here you can select either the arrow point or the tail, and you have various options to do that. And you can select the beginning arrow point, and you can see it's really large right now. So you can adjust that based on either the width or the weight of the line, and you can also adjust the scale. So let's say scale back up. You can just play with that as you need to. So you can either scale those endpoints with the weight or the percentage scale. Before we get done with this section, I would like you to go to the line tool and let's draw a line from left to right of the document with Shift held down. And let's make the stroke white. And now holding down Option, click, and holding down Shift, drag to the bottom of, or near the bottom of this blue section. Go to the blend tool, which looks like this square to circle. W is the shortcut. Now we're going to select this first top line and this bottom white line. And now we're going to double click on the blend tool. And in this little pop-up blend options, we're going to choose specified steps, and let's do 8. You can tab to see the preview and make sure your preview box is checked. Okay, go to Effect, Distort and Transform, and go to Zig Zag. And here is where we can adjust the size of the zigzags and the number of ridges per segment. So I just want you to play around with this. And then for points, we're going to make this smooth. So it's wavy. So now we can see our waves a little bit better to try to even them out. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that. And I want to show you while we're in this, if I choose my direct selection arrow and select just one of those lines and go to the stroke palette, I can adjust the weight, and you'll see that the size of the weight changes gradually from that smaller weight to the larger. Or if you want them to both be the same, you can click off, and with your block selection, you can just type in a value there. And let's change the swatch color to this blue color. Then go to color guide and let's choose a little bit lighter color. Go to object, arrange, send to back. And because we're overlapping this strangely, you can draw a rectangle to match the size of that section. And let's switch it from stroke to fill. And in the swatches panel, select a little bit darker blue. And let's do object, arrange, send to back on that one. So in your layers panel, you should be able to see at the bottom of that top layer the background rectangle and the blended line object you just made. So let's go ahead and save our Illustrator file. All right, let's start over here at the left. And with our black selection arrow, we want to make this first square with a centered stroke, which we already have natively. Stroke align center, and we want the corners to be rounded. On stroke inside, we're going to align the stroke to the inside. On this one, let's do stroke to the outside. And we're going to choose a bevel for the corner. And on this one, we're just going to change the weight of the line to 12. On this section, let's practice creating some dashed lines with some custom values. So for this first plumb line, let's select it, and with your stroke palette, make sure you have show options on, and click dashed line. All right, for the values of this dashed line, we're going to do 10, and you can use tab, and 5 for the gap, 2 for the next dash, and 5 for the last gap. So you can see it's making this pattern, and I'm keeping this native butt cap. On the next line, we're going to do a rounded cap, which you can see under cap styles rounded, and we're going to make it a dashed line that is 10, 8 to 8. For this next yellow line, let's do a projecting cap, which is right here, the third style. And we're going to make it dashed, and it's already the 10, 8 to 8. Or if it's not, you can type those values. For the last one, let's make this a dotted line. And to do that, we're going to make it dashed with a rounded cap. The values for the dash and gap will be 0 and 7. And you can delete the other values. So now we have a dashed line that is dotted, and you can increase the weight of that if you'd like when you're doing another project, and you could change the gap. Go ahead and do a save, which is Command or Control S, or go to File, Save. And moving over to page 2, we're going to be working more with the fill. With your black selection arrow, we're going to select the first top left circle and use the eyedropper, and you may want to zoom in again with the Z tool, zoom. And grab your eyedropper, and we're going to select a range of colors from this image. So you have to go back to your selection and go back to the eyedropper, or I for shortcut, until we get a good range of values. You can see as I hold down the sample, your swatch changes over here in the left. All right, that looks like a good range that represents this photo. Next, we're going to select all of the swatches with your black selection arrow, click and drag to select all of those. And in your swatches palette, go to the flyout menu and choose New Color Group. I'm going to call this one Magnolias. And we're going to keep these settings for selected artwork, and those two checkboxes. Okay. Let's move on to section 6, which is talking about Pantone colors. Pantone Matching System, or PMS, is a universal color library and industry standard to make sure colors match most accurately at professional printers. One such standard uses the CMYK process, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. There are printed Pantone books, and up until the end of August 2022, the Pantone color books were accessible through the Adobe Creative Suite. The Pantone company now has a free limited add-on with Adobe, or a premium subscription for the full version is $60 a year. For this exercise, we're just going to select this black box and use the eyedropper to sample this color, which has been placed as an image, and then selecting this black box, let's sample this color. So if we head over to swatches and double click on the swatch, you will see the RGB colors and the CMYK values here. We can still look up some values, so if I select this last gray box, and in our swatches panel, you can either use this flyout to open swatch library, color book, Pantone CMYK coded, or in this bottom left icon of the swatches panel, you'll be able to navigate to color books that way. So here is where we can use the search to type in the value 124-6, and it will narrow right down to that color. And when we click on it, it'll be added to our swatches panel. I went ahead and removed the last section, but I hope this exercise helps you better understand stroke and fill in Adobe Illustrator. And once you are done with all of the exercises, be sure to save the .ai file and then go to File, Save As, and change the format to PDF. And your PDF can use the preset High Quality Print, and you can uncheck Preserve Illustrator capabilities.